G'day. Last year, F1's social media audience in the US jumped by 58%. That's huge. Only one other country saw greater growth. I'll tell you which country that is, along with the reasons behind the dramatic growth in the US in just a moment. In 2021, Formula One was the fastest growing major sport on the planet in terms of social media follower growth. In general, follower numbers were up 40% across the board, but the US follower growth was up 58.1%. Only one other country had greater growth, and that was the Netherlands. And as you can imagine, with Max looking like he was going to win a championship for most of the year and taking it out, you can see why that market grew so rapidly. But why is America falling in love with Formula One? Well, let's look at the market in general. Over 330 million people. And for many years, that market was perhaps left to languish. It wasn't focused on. So over the last few years, with Liberty Media coming in and buying the sport, they've really turned their focus to the US market. And as with any sport and with any business, I guess, the more you focus on it, the greater the results. There's over 330 million people in that market, and many of them are passionate sports fans. Of course, they've had NASCAR and IndyCar, which has pretty much dominated the motorsport industry in that country for so long. In 2021, NASCAR averaged around 2.9 million viewers per race. Now, that was down 4% on 2019, a comparable year. IndyCar gets about 1 million viewers per race. And when you take NASCAR and IndyCar, there's something like 60 odd races per year in the US, whereas F1 has had one race per year. This year, of course, it will be 2 with Miami. Let's cut straight to Drive to Survive. It's a major driver of people to the sport. Yes, it got across to some 50 million people last year. That's worldwide. But many of those viewers were from the US. What it did was it introduced them to the personalities in the sport, because no person really wants to watch a car drive around the track. They want to watch a driver driving a car around the track. And when they know a little bit about Daniel or Lando or Nicholas, it brings them more into the sport. They have more ownership of it. I read a lot of comments on my social media page, and people say, oh, Netflix is all too flashy and it's just drama. It's not really what racing's about. Well, this is entertainment. And as much as the die-hard fans don't perhaps love the drama that's portrayed in that show, it's what a lot of people want to see. And if the sport is going to continue to grow, more and more people need to be drawn into it. And on a lesser note, pages like mine, where I tend to focus on the people side and the emotion of the sport, also brings a whole new audience to Formula One. If I go back to when I first started focusing on social media, my US audience was very small. But look at these stats today on Instagram, on YouTube. The American factor is significant and growing. I mentioned before that the sport had suffered a little bit because there wasn't a great enough focus. So why hasn't F1 been a popular sport in the US? Well, most of the races take place in the early hours of the morning. Now that's a drawback. Over the years, there's only been 57 F1 drivers, 2 of whom won championships. One, Mario Andretti, and the second was Phil Hill, who won the 61 championship. He really only just snuck in after his teammate died in Monza, and he took the championship by a solitary point. There's also the fact that there are so many competing sports in the US, and most Americans have no idea who the main players are in Formula One. Now, it's interesting that the most popular team in the United States is McLaren, partly due to the fact that their drivers are great fodder for TV, Lando and Daniel. And secondly, McLaren runs a team in Indy, which means straight away the brand is known. On the subject of the drivers not being known, if you take most sports like NFL, the stars of those leagues are seen everywhere and often on telly, in ads, in commercial campaigns. There's no doubt the sport has to do more in introducing the teams and the drivers to the American market, and things like the Dallas show run that took place last year. They're vital. They would have been, I'm guessing, 50 to 100,000 people down there, many of whom were getting their first look at an F1 car and an F1 driver. Someone like Checo Perez is going to have a larger audience in the US because of something like that. And getting back to Drive to Survive, on that show I see so many things that I had no idea happened in the paddock, and I spend all my day in the paddock, so I can only imagine what that does for you, the person sitting at home who's never been in the paddock, who's never been to a race, but is slowly but surely becoming more excited about this sport. Let's look at the Austin race for a second. Did you know that it had the largest audience in 2021 of any Grand Prix crowd? Over 400,000 people there over the weekend. The next most popular was Mexico with 370-odd thousand, and then Great Britain with 356,000. But that Austin figure is not that surprising when you've got 330 million people in the country and one race. Yes, you are going to get a lot of people wanting to go, and that's why Miami sold out virtually within the first day. I noticed on my social media posts around the time of the Austin race, so many people were saying that that was the first time they'd been to Formula One, and they were driven there primarily because of television and social media. Yeah, a little bit mainstream media, but that's dying out. Over the next few years, you're going to see more and more US involvement. We've already seen Oracle come in with a monster sponsorship deal of Red Bull. Depending on what you read, it could be anywhere as high as $100 million US per year. You've got Haas, already a US-based team, and then you've got Michael Andretti wanting to set up a team US-based starting in 2024. Other factors driving this interest? Well, you've got the Lewis and Max rivalry. That was sensational. And be 100% assured the US is very much committed to Formula One. You've got COTA already committing till 2026, and Miami, they're in till the early 30s. Remember too that there are more than 50 NASCAR and Indy races for punters to go and watch in the US. There's only one, well now two, US races for Formula One, but that number I think will grow over the coming years. Certainly if the sport's to continue to grow in this major market, people are going to have to learn more about the racing, the technical side, the people. The US races are shown on ESPN. They take the Sky UK's commentary team. So they'll get David Croft, they'll get Simon Lazenby, they'll get Ted Kravitz, Martin Brundle, and the entire crew. So what were the audiences like on ESPN? Well, averages out at 934,000 viewers per race. But that was a jump of some 54% over 2020. And yes, I know 2020 was a disrupted year with COVID. And the most watched race last year in the US on ESPN? It was the US Grand Prix at COTA. That coverage averaged 1.2 million views. That made it the most viewed race since ESPN reacquired the rights to F1 ahead of the 2018 season. And when you have a look at that figure, 1.2 million for the US, which is obviously broadcast in the afternoon in the country, compared with say 960,000 viewers for the major race of the year, the last race, which would have been broadcast in the morning. There's no doubt that F1's going to have to do more and more races in the US. Miami was a classic point, sold out in minutes. And you look on the resale sites for tickets, and they're going for crazy multiples. Going through those ESPN figures, I was amazed that the second most popular race last year was the French Grand Prix with 1.1 million viewers. I have no idea why the French did so well, do you? I hark back to last year out the front of the Budapest Kempinski and Ritz-Carlton hotels, where there were hundreds of fans waiting. And I spoke to Carlos Sainz about it, and he was very upfront about the fact that this is largely due to Netflix pushing the sport to a worldwide audience. More people know who the drivers are. And the audience that Netflix is typically picking up is a younger audience. It's the 18 to 34. That's, I admit, my audience too on social media. When I have a look at my stats, primarily those two categories, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, are my two largest demographics. And previously, the sport has had trouble finding those people and getting them excited. Things like Netflix and social media are bringing people to the sport who may never have discovered Formula One. I'd love to see more races in the US. Somewhere like Las Vegas would be an absolute winner. And the other thing I noticed too is a lot of you watching my videos aren't subscribed, and I don't know why. You need to see more of these videos and get notified when I put them out. So please like this video and then subscribe. Like, subscribe, it's easy to do. You'll find all of my images at prostarpics.com. If you want a beautiful canvas to put up on your wall, say Lando coming out of the tunnel, head to kimillman.com where you'll find my pictures, my photo books, even a line of merchandise. And for my best images live from the track, head to Instagram and search at Kim Illman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. What a grind.